spend with you. So here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy.
One of the hardest things to do in fear and the fear quotient of what people deal with, 40% of the population struggle from this fear. It is the number one fear that we all face. And it's not the it's not the fear of death. It's the fear of speaking. Getting up and speaking in front of people. And it's terrifying for a lot of people. It has to be even worse leading singing, because then you're more vulnerable, more open to criticism. And everybody has something to say about whatever you do. So it's fear. And fear plays a major part in all that we do with regards to those things of a spiritual nature. Many people express their fear for me. I was talked to a couple times this morning about, where's my cane? They saw the official walker docker over there. They go, but it's up there and you're back here. We're afraid for you. Go get your cane. I said, okay. So it didn't dawn on them. In order to go get my cane, I had to walk up here, walk past that, go out the back door, go to my car, open the trunk, get my cane, come back. But the expression, I appreciated. They were afraid for me. Afraid for me. And we do that a lot. Going to lunch. Linda mentioned something about, well, keep your eye on. And okay. So there's only two other people that went that would have had their eye out. So Linda told me to keep my eye out for either you, Margaret, or Joy. Your choice. But we do that for people. We're afraid for them. Whether or not they're afraid for themselves is something else. But fear. According to the American Heritage Dictionary, fear is a feeling of agitation, anxiety, caused by the presence or imminence of danger. That's fear. That's one kind of fear. There's a second kind of fear. The second kind of fear is what we want to talk about this afternoon. Extreme reverence, awe, as toward a supreme power. Fear God. Keep his commandments. If you go back into the book of Proverbs, the end of the first chapter, and you drop down to verse 7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. I mentioned in the men's section of the class yesterday about a man that I know, a preacher, he's retired now, by the name of Larry Haverstock. And Larry each day puts out a various proverb. And it's kind of fascinating looking at them day after day after day. And I'm finding, I forgot about that one. So I'll jot it down and mention it to myself to not forget that next time I make a short out of that one. A short 1-minute talk. Because there's power in those. But this one is powerful. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Having a healthy respect for who God is, all that God promises, all that God has done for us, the reverence and the awe. Really coming to know how to approach Him. As in my prayer I mentioned, I would that I could speak to God as friend to friend, as did David. How did David, that simple young boy, shepherd, how did he develop such a strong relationship with God? He could talk as friend to friend. I mean, David, there were parts of David's life that were odorific, to be sure. The dalliance with Bathsheba, the killing of Uriah, and on and on. But yet he felt comfortable. After acknowledgement of his sin, he felt comfortable to come to God and talk with him. Now, we go to lunch Sunday afternoons, several of us, and we feel comfortable with one another. We can talk with one another. Yesterday, people were over at the house following class. And I was, this is going to sound funny, but I was really glad that Austin came out of my office holding the M&M jar and eating out of it. And you go, why? He's snagging your M&Ms. No, he's not. Those are there for everybody. And I was glad that he felt comfortable to go in and get them. And would that he would have eaten the rest of them. Because now there's a few more left. So that means Adam and Linda and I can eat a few more. But I felt comfortable knowing that he was that comfortable with Linda and I, that he could do that. How does that happen? Is that just Austin? That's part of it. That's just Austin. But I think over the years, the familiarity has grown. I want people to feel comfortable. I don't want them to be afraid. That's one thing I really never ever wanted, was children to ever be afraid of me. I realize I'm considerably larger than them, but I want them to come to me. And I want people to know that when they come to God, that they need to come to him with absolute reverence. There's another passage. This one, and I apologize. I've got several written down here, but my eyes aren't what they should be. Go over to Proverbs, the 8th chapter. And so if you see me down here picking something up, it's because be that as it may. Proverbs 8, and drop down to verse 13. 8:13. Solomon writes, "The fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride and arrogance, and the evil way, and the perverted mouth I hate." Well, the fear of the Lord. When I have that reverence, that respect for God, I can't brook any babbling, i.e. evil. I don't like it. I don't want to be part of it, because it is contrary to everything that God would have and desire me to be. So that's part of who I am, because of my fear of the Lord. But stay in the book of Proverbs. And if you go over to the 10th chapter, verse 27, the fear of the Lord will prolong your life. You want a long life? And that's what people tell you all the time. Well, here's how you can elongate your life. Well, Proverbs 10:27, the fear of the Lord prolongs your life, but the years of the wicked will be shortened. How does that happen? Well, looking at it from a psychological standpoint, if you have anxiety and stress in your life, it diminishes your life expectancy. It just knocks it down. It's a given fact. if you're engaging in a lifestyle that is contrary. You're putting your whole body, your whole way of being at risk. Your life's going to be shortened accordingly. Any number of different illnesses, diseases are self-inflicted. Some of the things people do themselves, you just can't do and think that you're going to not have to reap the consequences. Consequences are there for whatever we do, whatever sin we may engage in. There are always consequences to be paid, and we don't think anything about it. We were talking at lunch today about having this ache and that pain and not being able to do this and kind of looking troglodytish with our hands. And I know why I've got arthritis, why I have bursitis, why I have the various things that I have. I know. And I enjoyed getting them. I truly did. I enjoyed being able to go out and play, to run, to jump, to ride a motorcycle, to crash a motorcycle, to get on it and crash it again. I enjoyed it. There are consequences to those things. And there are consequences to the sins that we do in life. And I'm not saying playing sports and enjoying yourself, crashing motorcycles and all that is a sin. But when we sin, there are going to be consequences. If you engage in recreational drug use, there's going to be consequences. Drinking, there's going to be consequences. And some of them could be immediate. Some could take time before they surface. But you're going to have consequences. So that's why this respect and reverence of God is so important. Go over to the 14th chapter of Proverbs. And we're going to drop down in verse 26. Proverbs 14:26. In the fear of the Lord, there is strong confidence. Now, notice how he starts this out. If you have that respect for God, that fear that we equated as extreme reverence or awe for a supreme being, if you have the fear of the Lord, now watch what he goes on to say. And his children will have refuge. 27. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, that one may avoid the snares of death. Life. Talked about it this morning. God gave to mankind life. He said, I want you to enjoy paradise. I want you to celebrate it. I want you to enjoy it, drink it in, savor it. But what man wanted was more. And it was just one thing more. We talked about it. And it cost mankind greatly. Wages of sin is death. We talked about that. But we know that we can have rejuvenation. We know that we can have our sins remitted. We know that with that remission of sin, there is the promise of life. Paul, as he writes his last letter to Timothy, points out, I have finished the course. I finished it. Oh, I fought the good fight. And I finished the course. 2 Timothy 4. And I know there's laid up for me the crown of righteousness. And not only to me, but to all who have loved his appearing. I know that the promise of life is there. And God is faithful. God does not deny himself. 2 Timothy 2, beginning about verse 10. down through 13. He's faithful, he's true. And while we remain faithless sometimes, he remains faithful. And he will fulfill what he's promised. And what he's promised is life. Is life. Isn't that wonderful? But see, that all starts with fear. A healthy respect for who God is. Now, you could go on and see the fear of the Lord causes one to depart from evil. That's over in the 16th chapter of Proverbs and verse 8. But let's go over to the 19th chapter and go into verse 23. Proverbs 19:23. And notice what he writes there. In 23, the fear of the Lord leads to life, so that one may sleep satisfied, untouched by evil. Oh, doesn't that sound wonderful? I don't know about you, but for whatever reason, I go to bed about midnight o'clock. And at 4 o'clock, I'm wide awake. And I can't go back to sleep. My brain just activates like that. And I'm there and I'm living what happened the day before, a week before, a year before. I'm also kind of beginning to calculate what I'm going to do that day. Things run around in the brain up there. But if I've really got it figured out with God, I can sleep. And I'm not saying because we can't sleep, we don't have it figured out with God. But if we want that peace, if we want that rest, we want that contentment, it's because we really have the fear of God, the respect for God, that we can sleep securely. Letting go and let God take over. Let God take mastery of your life. Because fearing God allows us to have a life that is satisfying. That's what we want. We want satisfaction in life. You're still there in Proverbs? Go to the 19th and look at verse 23. I read that about being satisfied with life and departing from evil. And that's what we long for. Satisfaction. Are you satisfied with where you are in life? Where you're headed? Or are you still kind of racked with fear? And I'm not talking about fear of God, reverence, but you feel like the sword of Damocles is hanging over your head. And it's just going to drop down on you before too long. See, the fear of the Lord, if we can get it figured out, is the beginning of, well, let's let Solomon tell us. Proverbs 22, verse 4. Proverbs 22:4. The reward of humility and the fear of the Lord. So he couples them together. Humility. Can you really understand humility? I mean, humble, poor in spirit. Now, that doesn't mean going around destitute, looking slovenly or anything like that, but understanding where you are in relationship to God. I submit to God. I submit. But watch what he goes on to say. Reading on further. Here's the end result. Last part. Are riches, honor, and life. Now, I'm not going to preach the doctrine of prosperity the way many charlatan preachers do. I don't think that's what he's talking about. Because riches come in a wide variety of manifestations. If you have the fear for God, you know that you're going to be productive. Whatever I do, I'm going to be productive. I'm going to work, I'm going to labor. I'm going to try to do better. You look from a sociological standpoint at the growth of the Church of Christ, and you realize that while it had its roots in Appalachia and the South among poor people primarily, over the years that it has been since reestablishment here in the United States, back in the days of Stone and Campbell, etc., that while it may have been poor people, nothing wrong with being poor, but those individuals gave birth to children that they now trained and taught. And their children moved up a step. And they had children. Those children moved up a step. And you look at the Church of Christ all these generations later, and you look at us, and we're not poor. We're not. We have named among us doctors, people of wealth, people that are comfortable, and yes, those that are a little bit poor. But it's not because, well, what's it because of? I think it's a work ethic. Because the scriptures teach a work ethic. And that's one of the things that I think, listening to people talk, that's what their parents taught them. And in many instances, their parents were members of the church. I know it's what Linda and I tried to teach our boys. We tried to teach them about God, strict adherence to his word, following it and nothing else. But we also tried to teach a work ethic, that you're responsible, and you work and you labor, working with your hands. And if you do, you'll be able to provide amply for yourselves. May not always be monetarily rich. But as David said, never have I seen the righteous forsaken or his descendants begging bread. So when I look at this, the writing of Solomon, the son of David, and writing these things, I understand. And it is a great takeaway that life can be so much better. But it all starts with the knowledge of God, the fear of God, the respect of God. Honor. And what greater honor is there but to be called the child of God? See, that's what John writes over in 1 John. See what great love the Father has for us, that we should be called children of God. And such we are. So fear, in and of itself, is not wrong. It's not wrong. And quite honestly, it is because of fear that I obeyed the gospel of Jesus Christ. Many people, they talk about, well, it's because of love that I obeyed the gospel. That may be why you did, but that's not why I did. I did not want, well, I put it this way. I had the fear of frying. F-R-Y-I-N-G. I don't know if that's the way you spell frying, but that's the fear I had. And it was imprinted on me. If you die, you're going to burn in hell. because you're lost. That was a motivator. And I was highly motivated. Now, what happened with that fear is that fear has been changed. My motivation is no longer because I'm afraid of frying, but I'm afraid of disappointing my Heavenly Father. And now I have a fear that motivates me to love Him, to revere Him, to hold Him in awe and absolute respect, to revere the Word and to take it. And, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, thy word have I hid in my heart, that I might not sin against thee. So that fear of a negative realm has been flipped. And over the years now, for me, it's become a positive. So one fear led to another fear. That's your lesson this afternoon.